In a new lawsuit out of Colorado, a woman claims that she was drugged and raped, and it was all at the hands of the Alexander brothers, Oren and Alon, and that this happened during the 2017 X Games in Aspen. But this is more than just another assault claim. It's part of a growing series of legal battles all of the Alexander brothers are facing. They're already in custody on alleged sex trafficking charges. We're going to break down the explosive allegations of this latest civil case right now. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. The wealthy and influential Alexander brothers are in more legal trouble, as yet another woman has now come forward accusing the brothers of being responsible for her drugging and rape when she was just 17 years old. This lawsuit, which was filed just before the new year in the U.S. District Court for the District of Colorado, highlights just even more disturbing allegations against the brothers, these powerful figures in the real estate and security industries. They are known for their lavish lifestyles and celebrity connections. And we're going to dive into this latest string of allegations and what this means for the brothers going forward. But before we get into the latest, here's a little background on the case, the brothers, where things currently stand, if you haven't been following our coverage on Sidebar. So there are three brothers, actually. We have 37-year-old twins, Oren and Alon Alexander, and their 38-year-old brother, Tal. Last Friday, a Miami magistrate judge denied bond for Alon, and that decision followed a tense back-and-forth hearing in federal court where Alon's defense attorney, Howard Shrebnick, made an impassioned case as to why Alon should have been granted bond. He argued that Alon's parents were willing to stake essentially their entire fortune to guarantee his appearance in court. The Alexander family, if you don't know, including parents Orly and Shlomo Alexander, they have significant wealth. And Shrebnick claimed that they were willing to offer up residential properties, office buildings, other assets totaling more than $100 million as collateral. Shrebnick also presented a proposal to house Alon under strict home confinement with private security guards around the clock. These private security measures were said to include V2 Global. This is a security company with high-profile connections, including former FBI agents, very similar to what we saw in the Sean Diddy Combs case. Now, the New York Times reports that Shrebnick described the Alexander family as prepared to post as high as $1 billion, even if it would leave the family destitute. That's how far they were willing to go. This offer, Shrebnick argued, would provide more than enough assurances to the court that Alon would not flee the country and he would attend all of his appearances. And the brothers themselves have been massively successful as well, with Oren and Tal heading up a luxury real estate firm. Alon is an executive at the family's private security company. And the defense also emphasized that Alon was a law-abiding citizen who had never been convicted of a serious crime before. Shrebnick argued that the presumption of innocence should not be overlooked, that Alon should not be detained in a horrific federal detention center while awaiting trial. But as we've seen in the Sean Combs case, there is a presumption of detention under the Bail Reform Act when we see these kinds of crimes and these kinds of charges. And federal prosecutors here, they strongly opposed the defense's bid for bond. They argued that the risk of flight here was simply too high. In fact, prosecutor Elizabeth Espinoza made the case that the charges against the Alexander brothers were extremely serious, that the possibility of a life sentence would give Alon and his brothers every incentive to flee the country, particularly given their strong ties to Israel. And coupling that kind of a two-edged sword here, prosecutors pointed out, yeah, the Alexanders' extensive financial resources, their wealth, it's not just capable of providing collateral, but it could be also used to escape. They have the means and the opportunity and the methods to do it. And Espinoza pointed out that Alon, along with his twin brother, they have been accused of sexually assaulting women since high school, that this suggests a pattern of predatory behavior. According to prosecutors, many of the alleged victims hadn't come forward until the investigation was open last year, but once it did, dozens of women have reportedly given statements and evidence supporting the claims. But after hearing both sides, Judge Eduardo Sanchez acknowledged that denying bond was a difficult decision, but ultimately sided with the prosecution, ruled that the risk of flight here was too great, and he noted that the brothers' vast financial resources, their strong ties to Israel, made it likely that they could or would attempt to flee the United States. All right, now before we go any further, I have to talk to you guys about something. This is huge for me. I cannot tell you how excited I am about this, but there is a grooming line called Brickle. I've been using it, talking about it for years. They are now our sponsor here on Sidebar. I am so excited to share this with you. So I have been using their incredible products for almost a decade. Their daily moisturizer, 2 times a day, hydrates my face, smooths out my skin. They have the eye cream that helps to fight those wrinkles, aging. In this business, you're not allowed to age. And then they got, of course, hair products too. I mean, do I need to say more? It's me. Come on, you know what I'm talking about. And Brickell has so much more to offer that they have made it super easy for you to try everything that I use with this extensive 16-piece free, yes, free sample kit. You get everything: face washes, moisturizers, anti-aging cream, shampoos, conditioners. Again, totally free. You're only paying for shipping. Also, and this is another reason why I love Brickell, this isn't a subscription. It's a one-time introduction to the brand so you can see what works for you. There's no strings attached. So right now you can head over to brickellmensproducts.com/sidebar or scan the QR code on screen and claim your free kit today. In a similar argument that was presented in Sean Combs' federal criminal case, the New York Times also reported that Judge Sanchez was also concerned about a, quote, 2-tier system of justice, one for the wealthy and one for those who are not wealthy. In other words, there are those who are charged similar crimes, same kind of set of crimes, same kind of allegations, who are not as wealthy as the Alexander brothers, and they might not be able to afford a $100 million bond or collateral and private security. So should we allow wealthy individuals to be granted pretrial release because they have the means to do it, while others who are similarly situated can't do it? That doesn't seem fair. Now, again, there was an argument put forward in Combs' case that, well, the only reason we're putting forward such an expensive and expansive bail package like this is because you say, prosecution, that his wealth, like this, the brothers' wealth, gives them an opportunity to flee the country. Well, we can use it to reassure you that all of your concerns will be met. But clearly the judge felt otherwise and denied bond. Now, while Sanchez didn't directly address the allegations of sexual assault and trafficking, he did note the strength of the government's case, citing the 42 women who have reportedly come forward with accusations against the brothers. The judge also noted that federal prosecutors have provided evidence of ongoing sex trafficking activities by the Alexanders, including the alleged exploitation of women from multiple states over the course of several years. That's a factor in a bail analysis. What the actual charges are, how severe they are, how expansive they are. That becomes an element of the dangerousness or the flight of risk factors in a bail analysis. And the family had previously pledged $115 million in assets in an attempt to secure the release of the third brother, Tal, who is also charged with similar offenses. He also was denied bond last month, remains in federal custody. But the bail story doesn't end there, because there was actually a hearing today where the judge decided that the 3 brothers are now scheduled to appear in court on January 15th, where the judge will review Alon Alexander's bail application and consider the appeals of Alon and Tal on the bail issue. So now the question is, how do we get here? Well, Alon, along with his twin brother Alon and their older brother Tal, they were arrested in December as part of a massive investigation into sex trafficking and sexual assault. The trio, who have a long history in luxury real estate, security, prominent figures in the New York and Florida scenes, they are accused of orchestrating a multi-year scheme to essentially lure women into sexual encounters, with some women alleging that they were drugged and sexually assaulted and trafficked by the brothers. Now, the federal indictment that was filed in Manhattan, it charges the brothers with conspiracy and sex trafficking, and there's accusations involving both coercion and force, and we're talking about in cities like Miami Beach, Manhattan, between 2010 and 2021. And now that brings us to what we want to talk about now. This latest civil lawsuit that was filed by a woman named Malin Garrett, the latest alleged victim who has come forward claiming that her life was turned upside down when she encountered Alon and Alon Alexander. And in her filing, she says she had no idea that her life was about to be irreversibly changed. What began as a chance meeting in a bar resulted in drugging and rape by defendant Alon Alexander, aided by the actions of defendant Alon Alexander. So we want to start at the beginning of this, and according to her complaint, this lawsuit obtained by Law&Crime, Garrett says that she met the brothers on January 27, 2017, when she was just 17 years old, and this was out in Aspen, Colorado for the weekend with her friends for the Winter X Games, and the friends are identified in the filing as Witness 1 and Witness 2. Now, you've probably heard about the X Games, the extreme sports competitions, features things like skateboarding, snowboarding, the like. Well, Garrett says on that day, which was a Friday, her and her friends decided to go out. So they call for a car to go to a club in Aspen called Bootsy Bellows, which, by the way, has since shut down. And she says that the club was crowded with what she described as a dark and disorienting atmosphere, lots of loud music playing, lights flashing. Well, a few minutes after she entered this bar, she was allegedly noticed by Alon Alexander. And according to her filing, quote, just a couple minutes after entering the club, defendant Alon Alexander saw Malin and did an immediate double take. He grabbed Malin's hand and urged her and her friends to join him at his table. Other people at defendant Alon Alexander's table included his twin brother, defendant Oren Alexander, and a number of young men who work with defendant Alexander brothers. And during this encounter, she says Alon was almost exclusively paying attention to her. And at some point during their conversation, he revealed that he was from Miami and he was 30 years old, which this is where it gets kind of creepy. Garrett says she told Alon that she was 17, but according to her, this didn't discourage him from engaging with her in a dangerous manner, because according to her filing, defendant Alon Alexander told Malin that he loved the fact that she was in high school and that he liked high school girls. Defendant Alon Alexander, knowing that Malin was 17, gave her alcoholic drinks, which she later realized may have contained drugs. And following the alcohol, she says then came unwarranted physical contact. Remember, she's still at the table with the brothers as this is going on. So according to the filing, later that night, again in this club, defendant Alon Alexander told Malin to loosen up and stop being so tense. He then felt Malin's stomach and pulled her shirt up to reveal her abdominal muscles, calling for his brother defendant Oren Alexander to also look at Malin's abdominal muscles. And by the way, just as an aside, while this is happening, she claims that she noticed Oren trying to kiss one of her friends, witness 1. So as she's still standing at this table, she says Alon continues to touch her, and then she begins to feel woozy. She eventually starts struggling to keep her head up, says she laid her head on Alon's knee, but she says Alon tried to discourage her from doing this, according to the filing. So as not to draw attention to the fact that she had been drugged, he told her she was perfectly fine and to stop being so dramatic. He insisted that Malin remain sitting in an upright position and stop lying down, as difficult as this was for her. So at this point, she's claiming she's, pretty out of it. And as it neared closing time at the club, Garrett says that the brothers invited her to an after party at a residence that they claim to have at the Little Nell, which is apparently a hotel that offers luxury resort rentals. So Garrett says she was then ushered into an Uber, but that she insisted she wouldn't leave with them unless one of her friends, witness 1, was with them. Oddly, though, she says upon hearing that, the brothers told her she was a good girl and a good friend. So she ends up going to the Little Nell with the brothers and both of her friends, but when they arrived at the residence, she says she began to panic. According to the filing, Malin had presumed a residence at the Little Nell would consist of multiple rooms, but it turned out to be one room with 2 beds and no separate sitting area. Once in the room, defendants insisted on keeping the lights off. In the room, witness 1 and defendant Oren Alexander sat on one bed while defendant Alon Alexander made Malin and witness 2 sit on the adjacent bed with him. Witness 2 passed out. Now, it's unclear why one of Garrett's friends supposedly passed out, whether that was from fatigue or maybe other nefarious reasons or alleged nefarious reasons. It remains unknown. But Garrett at this point says she didn't want to be there any longer. But she says she felt paralyzed due to a combination of the alcohol and the brothers' aggressive behavior. And Garrett says that Alon slid his hand down her pants right in front of her friends and began to assault her. She says she tried to stop him, but she couldn't. According to the filing, defendant Alon Alexander then brought Malin into the bathroom, immediately shut and locked the door behind him, trapped her inside, and due to the potentially spiked drinks and the age and size of defendant Alon Alexander, 17-year-old minor Malin was not in a position to fight back. And Garrett says Alon violently raped her in that bathroom. Now, we're not going to go into the graphic details here, but I do want to mention this because apparently, according to her, when he was finished, quote, defendant Alon Alexander grabbed Malin's phone, told her to unlock it, and followed himself on Instagram from her account and messaged himself, "Hey babe," from her account. Which, by the way, makes you wonder if these allegations are true. Was this a way to make it look consensual, right? Have this message come from her account? Now, unfortunately, Garrett alleges she was not the only victim that night. While her other friend, witness 2, was still passed out on the bed, She says Orrin sexually assaulted witness 1 and tried to rape her, but she was able to fight him off and escape the room. Garrett claims at some point witness 2, the female who was passed out in the bed, was also sexually assaulted by Alon, but details on that also are kind of unclear at this point. Garrett says as a result of the brothers' alleged actions, her life will never be the same. According to the lawsuit, Malin has sustained past, present, and future severe psychological and physical trauma, pain and suffering, emotional distress, loss of enjoyment of life, and has been greatly injured in her reputation and character, as well as medical expenses and other economic losses, and her injuries will be permanent in nature, resulting in permanent impairment. Again, the harm aspect of these cases is really important to prove, particularly in terms of damages, because I will tell you it's important to mention that Garrett is able to sue now because of the enactment of the Colorado Sexual Abuse Accountability Act, which went into effect in January of 2022. And it states that, quote, a person who was the victim of sexual misconduct that occurred when the victim was a minor and that occurred on or after January 1st, 1960, but before January 1st, 2022, may bring an action pursuant to this part, so long as the action is commenced before January 1st, 2025. Now, prior to this, Colorado's statute of limitations for sexual assault would have been 6 years from Garrett's 18th birthday, meaning her statute of limitations would have expired in 2023 and it would have been considered too late. But remember, she still has to prove this happened. So issues of recall, cross-examination, corroborating information, why she's filing this now, those are all things that the Alexander brothers may use in their defense. As for what Garrett is suing for, she's alleging Alon Alexander sexually assaulted her. And she's suing both of the brothers for civil conspiracy, alleging that Alon and Orrin established an agreement to engage in sexual activity with her without obtaining her consent or through the use of substances. And she's seeking a jury trial for compensatory damages, pre- and post-judgment interest, reimbursement of legal fees, and other relief that is deemed appropriate by the court. Now, in a prepared statement that was obtained by the Miami Herald, attorneys for the brothers denied they committed any sort of crime here, said that this was just an attempt to win some money. The statement reads, absolutely no rape occurred. Moreover, Colorado law does not criminalize consensual sex when both parties are 17 or older. This false allegation is an 11th hour attempt to profit off the Alexanders' success. Now, while it is true that Colorado state law does recognize the age of consent as 17 years old, that would only apply, of course, if Garrett did indeed consent to engaging in the sexual activity, which she denies. But remember, this lawsuit that was filed by Garrett is far from just an isolated case, right? Because in addition to this filing, the Alexander brothers are facing multiple other civil lawsuits, a few of which we've covered in previous Sidebar episodes. One such case was filed back in December by a Jane Doe who says that both Orrin and Alon raped her, that the latter even tried to coerce her into performing sex acts on a third man, Ohad Fisherman. Fisherman has also been charged in Miami for that alleged incident. In fact, according to that civil filing, this part was incredibly disturbing. Back in 2016, quote, while being raped, plaintiff instinctively started pretending to enjoy the rape, as she had previously heard a rapist may stop if the victim acts like they are enjoying the rape. It worked. Shortly thereafter, Orrin stopped and angrily exclaimed, F this, as he threw his condom on the ground and stormed out of the bedroom. Jane Doe, who says that she briefly dated Alon back in 2016 after meeting him on the Bumble dating app, is suing for violation of New York's gender-motivated violence protection law. And then there's another case that was filed back in July. This concerns Renee Willett, who alleges that Orrin Alexander drugged and raped her in December of 2015 after the two apparently met on a private dating app. According to that filing, Willett says that while at Orrin's apartment, he'd offered her a drink that she believes was spiked. She alleges in her lawsuit, defendant proceeded to give Renee a tour of his apartment to purportedly show her his art collection. After viewing the art in the living room, defendant then led Renee to a room near the main entrance of the apartment. This room turned out to be the defendant's bedroom. And it was there, she says, that he trapped her and proceeded to rape her. She is also suing under the gender-motivated violence protection law. So as of now, the brothers continue to sit in jail on charges of sex trafficking conspiracy, sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion. Tal Alexander is additionally charged with a second count of sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion. If convicted, they face a maximum sentence of life in prison. Now again, I said this in the Sean Combs case, given the mountain of allegations there, we have the mountain of allegations here, These brothers are innocent. They are presumed innocent right now. They haven't been found guilty of any crime. They haven't been found liable with respect to any of these lawsuits. We will see what their defenses are. We will see what these claims are. But we're going to continue to bring you the latest updates on these brothers' criminal and civil cases as they continue to unfold. That's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Jesse Weber. I'll speak to you next time. I have an exciting announcement for you guys. The video version of Sidebar is now available on Spotify. That's right, we are so thankful for your guys' support of Sidebar. Us getting this show on Spotify video is truly due to how loyal this audience is, so thank you so much for that. And yes, you can now watch and listen on the go, from the Alexander brothers to Diddy to the United Healthcare murder updates. It is all on Spotify. So right now, you can scan the QR code on screen or click the link in the description to follow Sidebar on Spotify.